All right, guys, we got a new section to the America Happens website called the Whistleblowers Forum, where you could go on there and anonymously or using your name post anything that you want and contact other whistleblowers to talk about what's really going on out there. All right, so welcome to the latest episode of Blood Money. Today we have a very special guest, Patrick Byrne. How you doing, sir?
Vem, good to see you out and a free man.
Oh,
Right
yeah,
on.
yeah. Good to have you on the Blood Money podcast, man. So, let's start, dive right into it. Enemy Within kind of really blew me away because you're kind of, we've been hanging out, for the last few years, but I didn't know you had this insane, almost James Bond, Bourne ultimatum type of past. Do you want to just dive right into it and tell us a little bit about the movie?
Well, where do you want to start? You've seen the movie.
Yes.
I can tell you, General Flynn spent most of this year making that movie. He called me the day after the Durham report was delivered, and which was a cover up. And he called me at 7:01 a.m., which he does when his wife Lori is telling him you can't call until 7. So he called at 7:01, and he said, "Patrick, our republic's hanging by a thread. It may already be lost, but if it isn't, we're going to get your story out there. And this information war we're in, this is our one and only hypersonic missile. We got to get this out there." So that turned into some magazine interview, which turned into a book, which he made into this movie this year.
Wow. Essentially, it seems like the government finds people like you that they could utilize for their own benefit. What do you think? What are the talents that they saw in you where you were targeted for this kind of role?
Well, let me be clear. I've never been a spy. I've never worked for the CIA, but I've worked for lots of other parts of government. It started when I was 20. I was a college student in China. And as the movie explains, something odd happened. And a foreigner came up to me and we became friends. And he ended up, after a few meetings, asking me to get a letter to Uncle Sam, which I did. One thing led to another. So in the background of my life, and I thought this was going to die with me. I've lived all these 40 years with no one was to know anything. And I maintained a very high level, the highest level security clearance. So at my involvement was basically on matters of peace. They understood that was the thing that they could and I don't mean to overstate it. It's the kind of thing that every couple of years, someone might tap at me on the shoulder and ask me to do something. And it generally had to do with matters of peace. A lot of it was academic. It was, we hear you've been talking about such and such publicly, would like you to come to such and such a facility 1 month from now, present a PowerPoint with your thoughts, answer questions, and then we'll escort you out. Sometimes it had to do with international travel and always with peace. It also had to do with fighting crime on Wall Street. That's when I started working for the FBI. But most of the things really were from the National Security Council. After 9/11. And then in 2010 or so, Obama sort of appointed me a national, it was called a national intelligence asset, of which I understood there's only a handful. And it was for real ace in the hole situations I was described, I was told. But again, I emphasize I'm not a spook. It wasn't intelligence in the work that people understand. I'm not out there stealing secrets or something. I was out there on matters that had to do with peace. And then in 2015, I got pulled into what was in fact the origins of the Russia collusion story. And I set up, I can say, the Russian collusion hoax. And was all a hoax. I thought I was doing something good for them, but it turned out they were using me to create this phony scandal.
Wow. That is pretty insane. Like, so you're in it, you think, this whole time you've been dealing with matters of peace, and then you start getting used for nefarious reasons. How does that feel? How does that go? When is it that you're like, wait a minute, I'm being used here for evil reasons? This is not what they sold me on.
When that happened was the first week of February 2016, because as you know from the movie, I was used to set up the Russian collusion hoax. Then I was used to bribe Hillary Clinton for what I thought was legitimate law enforcement, but turned out to be a scheme of Barack Obama and John Brennan and James Comey to put Hillary Clinton in a snow globe. They wanted her to accept a bribe so that then when she became president, which in January of 2016, seemed foreordained.
Mhm.
uh, uh, that they would own her. And there'd be a Bunsen burner at the heart of the DOJ. And the information, Patrick, is going to be on the Bunsen burner. The
Mhm.
hand on the Bunsen burner is going to be one of Barack Obama's people. If Hillary is a good girl, defends Obamacare, the flame stays low.
Wow, wow.
If she's a bad girl, gets turned that way. Barack Obama is going to manage Hillary Clinton for 8 years. Then she steps down and Michelle's going to run. And Patrick, that's the plan. And so that's what was explained to me. And Hillary, so my bribe was just bait to lure Hillary into a snow globe.
Wow, wow. And it's like a control mechanism by essentially Obama. If Hillary were to come to power, then basically she's controlled for the next 8 years or 4 years.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then they threatened my life.
Mhm.
And then they said, so now you understand when we tell you need to scrub every moment of this from that memory of yours, it's really a matter of life or death.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, it's a fascinating documentary. It's actually kind of mind-blowing. And what I found myself is the whole time I'm trying to categorize you. I'm trying to be like, okay, what would your title be in this situation? You know what I mean? It's like, is he like a James Bond type? That's why, I guess a little bit of confusion in terms of, is this spy type stuff? But it seems very different than that, I guess.
No, most of it has been overseas. I think there's one or two. The book that it's based on is called Danger Close, and I give a couple examples in the book. One had to do with reestablishing diplomatic relations with Vietnam in 1988. The other was in 2006. There were a lot of Iranians who seemed to be crossing my paths and bumping me and trying to get me to go to Iran. And I was eventually instructed the next time one of them does that, accept this invitation and go into Iran and see how far up into Iranian society you can schmooze. And so next time, I happen to be in Qatar right now. I'm about 40 miles from looking across the water at Iran. But in 2006, I was asked to do that. And so next time I was in the Middle East, some Iranians found a reason to meet me and asked me to go. And I went into Iran. And I came out a week later, 10 days later, I guess, best friends forever with Qasem Soleimani and the Quds Forces. The Quds Forces were my boys. And when I came back and reported this, of course, people's heads exploded and said, Qasem Soleimani is the number one on our terrorist list. He's the number one.
Wow.
I said, Dallas, you told me to go to Iran and see how far into society I could schmooze. So I went to Iran and I saw how far into society I could schmooze. What are you getting mad at me for? You told me. There's been a number of situations like that where they give me an instruction and then I went and did something. And when I came back, their heads would explode. And I'd say, look, you're the guys who told me to do this. So I did that.
You would exceed expectations in many ways.
They say, yeah, but we didn't mean to become friends with the number one terrorist in the world. We didn't mean that. I said, well, you didn't say that. You just said, go see how high into society you can go.
Wow. I mean, it seems like, I guess, like your people skills, your ability to befriend people. I mean, world-class level, Olympic level skills there, I would say, right?
As I say in my book, I think that I come across as mentally handicapped. There's a funny movie called Jeremiah Johnson, where there's an old woman whose kids are butchered and Robert Redford saves her and sets her. And as he's leaving, he says, old woman, the engines will leave you alone now, woman, because you are touched. I think for some reason I've been used, and the book gives you a few more examples. But for example, the ISIS media team, the people who do the pilots burned alive in cages, they have a selfie taken on Christmas Day in a slum, Christmas Day 2012 in a slum in the south of Giza, Egypt. And it's 4 guys from the ISIS media team with this tall American guy in a jean jacket. And that was me.
Oh, wow.
So they've always kind of thought it was funny I could move in and out of these circles. But
wow. I mean, what do you attribute that to?
I think I come across as mentally touched. I don't know. You'll have to tell me.
I don't know. I would say, like, from my estimation, I found you always to be really approachable and like just easy going and stuff. That's what I would say. I mean, that's my assessment,
I would think so. I think my mom brought me up with manners. I'm respectful to people. Uh, I don't know. They've always been treated me. It's funny. I've been with some of the craziest people on earth, and everyone's always treated me with great, just an honorable way. I would say, even though that we knew we were each other's enemies, I never run down the USA. I'm never one of those kind of guys.
Hmm.
But they always understood that what they were dealing with. But they always just sort of treat me honorably, even really bad guys.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for people that don't understand the life you've lived, the worlds you've seen, what is there a fictional character, an iconic fictional character that you're like, you know what? It's mostly like, it's kind of like, that's kind of what I was doing. Is there anybody that comes to mind?
It could be Voltaire's Candide. It could be Candide.
Why?
That, well, he just sort of moved around the world. This character, it moves around the world and just sort of had all these adventures, and everybody, I don't know. It could be Voltaire's Candide.
Wow.
I don't know how to. They always wondered the same thing, and it's funny because I'm one of these guys who tries to ingratiate himself with foreigners running down the U.S. If anything, I defend the U.S.
Uh-huh.
And for a lot of these kind of people, they hate the U.S. and they want to argue, but they found a guy that's willing to sit with them. We'll do a goat grab, we'll call it, with Hezbollah in the Bekaa Valley where they slaughter a goat, and I'll sit with Hezbollah.
Mm-hmm.
And I once had a picnic with some guy. They didn't tell me his name, but we talked politics in a very respectful way, ate goat together, lamb actually, this and that. And when I left, the people walked me away, say, you just shook the hand of the man who skinned William Buckley, your CIA station chief. There was a CIA station chief.
Oh, wow.
And that was the man who skinned him.
Wow.
So, but you go where you're told to go. Well, what I eventually realized, I've never said this, but I eventually realized that in 2017, 2018, I think they were trying to get me killed. And I think they were trying to get me killed because the assignments got really dangerous. In fact, in the movie,
the government was trying to have you killed? Like they were trying to send you off on difficult assignments to make sure you got offed?
I believe that may be the case because I knew too many secrets. And that's why you see in the movie, there's some pictures of me in a government facility in Venezuela in 2018.
Uh-huh.
And I started realizing that that I think someone up there might want to be getting me killed because I knew too many secrets.
Wow.
And a lot of those secrets are in this movie. I know a lot more secrets, which is why I'm kind of one of the reasons I'm laying low in Qatar right now.
You also have a bounty on your head, I've heard, from like Venezuela, 25 million. Is that like true?
Yeah, I was in West Africa a few months ago.
Wow.
Someone tried to kidnap me. And the police, they did not know that I was actually in league with the secret police working on something for them in Ghana.
Wow.
And that we were cooperating on something together. And they told me that under questioning, they were discovering, Patrick, these thugs in Ghana, there's a bounty out on you. And all the different criminal networks in Ghana are under orders to try to kidnap you, not kill you, but kidnap you, and you're going to be taken to a third country. And then that same night, I got a phone call from America telling me there was an agency of the U.S. government telling me, you got a $25 million bounty on your head. They've picked out the hole in Burkina Faso. They're going to hold you, a hole in the ground.
Oh, wow.
And this is all being managed by a big Nigerian gangster. And it's on the orders of Venezuela. They're trying to kidnap you, and there's this $25 million bounty on your head.
Mm. And what do you have to do to have such an honor?
Well, on July 28th, Sunday, Venezuela had their election. And in their election, the regime got 2 million votes and the opposition got 7 million votes. But the Venezuelan regime planned on doing what they do every election, and that was they were going to stuff 5.5 million votes.
Oh, wow.
Well, they have a software tool that lets them stuff 5.5 million votes. And that software tool was working through July 27th, right up until midnight. But at 12:01, our software tool stopped working, started spinning out random 9-digit numbers instead of what they needed to enter each ballot into the system with. And 10 days. And so that's why the Venezuelan regime canceled all their normal fake transparency about their election. And just all through that Sunday, they didn't report anything because they weren't able to stuff. They went nuts trying to stuff, and their system for stuffing ballots didn't work. And then they came out the next morning and said, look, we won 51-49. Get used to it. They just announced it with no backup.
Yeah.
And then 10 days later, they reverse engineered that tool that they normally use, and they discover it had been hacked. Now, for some reason, the Venezuelan government thinks I know something about this, and they've put a $25 million bounty on my head.
Are you serious? Wow. That is, I mean, did you think when you were growing up, did you ever have a semblance of like, this is the life you're going to be leading?
Oy. No. Well, I can tell you, I think it's a line in the movie. It's in the book, but it's a line in the movie that the funniest part was that nobody knew about was that in 2005 and 2006, the Senate Judiciary Committee got their hooks in me. And they had become aware that I had this very unique, I was told many times, this kind of a unique relationship that you have with the U.S. government. It's almost, I know this sounds kind of crazy, but it's almost like I've been married to the U.S. government, at least in my mind. Like, I've never been married. I don't have children or family. I had my entrepreneurial life and then this other life, which often made my entrepreneurial life feel like a footnote.
Yeah.
And there were some years I put more into this other life than I was putting into building a $2 billion company. And it felt kind of like I was just entwined, like I was married to Uncle Sam. I don't know how to describe it other than so he knows everything about me, where he knows everything, and my whole life was taken over. But in 2006, the Senate Judiciary Committee became aware of this, and they brought me in and got to know me for a year. And they explained to me that our mandate is to stop corruption. And our power to investigate corruption transcends every power within government. And so that makes us the ultimate bulwark protecting the Constitution, because we have the right to investigate corruption. And if someone tells us, if we get word that the manufacturer of nuclear weapons is corrupt, we look into it, and no one gets to tell the Senate Judiciary Committee, oh, you don't have the right clearance. Every part, and corruption is defined as anything that can be touched by a civil or criminal penalty. So, that means everything in America, the Senate Judiciary Committee can look into, Patrick. So they put me to work spying on the only time I've been a spy, I've never been a spy for the CIA or anyone like that. The only time I've been a spy is a spy against the U.S. government for the Senate Judiciary Committee, where they had me holding meetings and meeting with different parts of the government and reporting back to them, which was an emotionally kind of conflicting thing to do. Mm-hmm. And then eventually they did this crazy thing, which is depicted in the movie. Do you want to explain what's shown in the movie? That's a word-for-word conversation, that scene in the movie. Do you know the scene I'm talking about?
Refresh my memory real quick.
Well, there's a point in September 2006, they asked me to come in. Maybe I've been working for them for a year, having these other relationships across the government, but taking nudges from them and trying to find things they were looking for, things they were trying to figure out. And they called me in and they gave me this speech again, how their power transcends every power in government. Mm-hmm. And they said that it's our job to stop. We think you're right. It's our job there was some kind of corruption taken over the United States government. It's our job to stop it, but we can't stop it. And I said, I know, this is what I've been saying. What are you going to do? And they said, well, I said, how are you going to stop something like this? And because they said, look, it's everywhere. And it's like, it's a foreign nation some days, but maybe it's not. We don't know. And I finally interrupted the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I said, I know, this is what I've been saying. How do you stop something like this? And the guy said, we're going to stop it because we have you and you're going to stop it.
Oh, wow. I remember that. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And he pulls out a letter, and there were 7 senators from both parties around the table. And they said, this hasn't been done since World War II. But in World War II in America, we were concerned about German sympathizers within the government. An American businessman from Wall Street was asked to become a German sympathizer and help flush them out. And Patrick, we're seeing the president tomorrow night. This is going to be sitting, we're going to show him this. It's going to be sitting in a safe the rest of your life. And I couldn't even touch it. They held it, and I stood with my hands behind my back and read it. And it was a page and a half, and the first paragraph said something about their concerns about systemic corruption infiltrating the federal institutions of our nation's government. The second paragraph says, the Senate Judiciary Committee requests that Patrick Byrne be afforded extraordinary latitude under the laws of the United States to investigate and disrupt corruption within the American, or something very action-oriented, not like investigate and report, but like, we're going to stop this. And they said, now we may not be senators. This is what you're going to do with your life, Patrick.
Yeah. Wow.
We may not be senators when you finish. We may not be alive when you finish, but the country needs you to do this. So this is what you're doing with your life. And no one asked me. It was just like they were telling me this is what you were going to do.
What year was this again?
That was September 06.
06. Wow. Okay.
So now flash forward 10 years. I'd set up the Russian collusion hoax. I had bribed Hillary Clinton for what you remember that part of the movie?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And they gave me this, and I was told I'd be killed if I opened my mouth about any of it.
Yeah.
That to me satisfied the conditions of this letter: systemic corruption infiltrating the federal institutions of our nation's government. So that's when I decided. This started. You asked me the question, "How did you know?" or "When did you decide that they were?" It was early February 2016.
Wow.
And I decided from that spot I was going to disrupt my chain of command. I didn't know how, but they were involved in a coup to take over the government through soft espionage, and I was going to disrupt it. And they gave me my chance 5 months later when they asked me to get back with Maria Butina. A couple of staffers confirmed to the movie makers, yes, this letter exists.
Yeah.
I can tell you the senators, when reached for comment, I wish they had put this in the movie. The senators all said, they all made the same statement. We will neither confirm nor deny that we've ever met with Patrick Byrne, or whether there ever was such a meeting, or whether or not we ever signed such a letter. We will neither confirm nor deny, which I think they should have put in the movie. Because to me, I mean, obviously, if I'm lying, they would say I'm lying.
Yeah, exactly. No, it sounds like some covert stuff when you're talking about confirm or deny, you know?
Yeah. So I think that's funny. And to me, I mean, there's staffers who've confirmed its existence. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's like Buffett says, you're never going to fight with somebody about who won the 1937 World Series. 1930, it's on a piece of paper somewhere. Just go look it up. Don't fight with people about it.
Yeah.
They have confirmed that there is this letter, and staffers confirmed it. One of the senators confirmed it to somebody else I know. So there's no point in us arguing about what's on the letter. We don't have to argue. Just release the letter. Just show. But I've been told that this drives Judge Garland crazy. They've been wanting to prosecute me for 3 years. Were you at the Reawaken America where I stood up and dared them? I said, if you want to get Trump or you want to get Flynn, come through me. I take response. Were you at that Reawaken?
I've heard it. I don't know if I was there personally, but I've heard about that. Yeah.
I said, you come through me. I'll take you indict me first. I take responsibility for everything, for J6, for December 18th, for everything. You indict me first. In fact, I offered, I'll do a military tribunal tomorrow. You guys can hang me by dusk tomorrow if you want. I'll sign any paperwork that relinquishes my right. I'll take a military tribunal. There's one thing. I defend myself in 1 hour. And in 1 hour, I'm going to call about 6 witnesses. I'm going to interview them for about 10 minutes each, ask them a few questions, and they're not going to hang me. They're going to hang you.
Wow. Because of all the stuff, obviously. Like that's wow.
But I'm telling you.
Wow. And so like the only way they could really, because I totally get why you're worried for your life, because the only way they could really stop the release of information that if it ever becomes threatening to you or them, is by basically getting rid of you. So I mean, you're constantly dealing with.
I made a video and put it on a thumb drive and put it under a dead man switch. I put it under a dead man switch. In addition,
Mhm.
General Flynn told me, and when we split up in January of 2021, and we knew our country had just been conquered by a communist overthrow, a Bolshevik overthrow. I said, like, I guess I'm going to have to leave the country. And he said, Patrick, there's nowhere you can run. Anywhere you go, they can. He's really a very funny guy, you know.
Yeah.
He said, anywhere you go, you know how it works. They're just going to, if you go to someplace in South America, somebody from the U.S. is just going to go to some cartel or some gangster group and say, look, there's an American living over in such and such a hut. You know, we'll get, here's $10,000 in an envelope. You kill him, we'll give you another $10,000, and you get one suitcase you can bring into America and something like that. And
Wow.
and I said, well, if I stay, can't they kill me? And he said, well, they can, but there's a lot more paperwork involved. And he said, your best bet. And then when he called me in March of 2021, he said, your best bet is getting as big as possible.
Yeah.
Getting as big as possible. Come join me in Florida and we'll get you on the circuit. We'll get you as big, because once you're big, it's assassinating you is counterproductive for them.
Wow. Yeah. Like just be out there and be noisy. I mean, where are you at right now? Where does it stand right now? I mean, you just dropped this huge bomb on the world. And I got to tell you, with the enemy within, it's almost like there's so much in there to unpack, because it's just so unbelievable for anybody that's living a normal life, you know? Like, where does that kind of, I mean, now that you've showed this to the world, what's that done for your life? I mean, how have things changed? Or
well, I'm in Doha, Qatar, and I'm actually kind of stuck here because, ironically enough, I'm having some heart issues. I'm not able to fly, but it's okay. I'm stuck here. Even Israel cannot assassinate people here. As you know, a month or two ago, they assassinated the leader of Hamas. They had to wait till he left. He left and went to Tehran. And when he got to 12 hours after he left and was in Tehran, they assassinated him. Wow. But even Israel couldn't assassinate him when he was in Qatar. Wow. So that's kind of the situation. But I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back as soon as they have to do a heart thing for me. And then after they do the heart thing, I'll get on a plane and come back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got to ask you this, you know, you've been so integral with this movement when it comes to elections. And I mean, obviously there's the work we did on elections, which I'll get to in a second, but, you know, with, you know, the lawsuits with, you know, the J6s and the Tina Peters of the world. I mean, you went all in on, you know, trying to save this country from the worst. I mean, that seems like that became part of your fabric as of 2016. I mean, is it pretty much at that point you felt you were programmed? This was, you know, live or die. This is what you're going to do.
That's exactly it. 2020.
Wow.
2016. Yeah, I went pot. What do they call it in poker? Pot limit, pot committed. I went pot committed because I knew when 2020 happened that what we were seeing was the tail end of a coup that started around Thanksgiving of 2015, and I was part of it.
Yeah,
setting up the Russian collusion hoax and setting up the Hillary Clinton thing. I knew that there was a coup going on to take over the United States from within. And then when all the irregularities about 2020 popped up, I knew that that we were looking at the completion of a soft coup. So I knew there was no point in, you know. I'll tell you a funny story about Flynn. Flynn's a very funny guy.
Yeah.
The two hardest times I've ever seen him laugh. Can I tell you the two hardest times I've ever seen him laugh?
Please, yeah.
The first was when the January 6th committee got started, the opening, there was a hearing from Liz Cheney gave a speech and somebody else gave a speech, the opening of the J6 committee. And they said, and she said, and on the night of December 18th, 2020, the Oval Office was penetrated by General Michael Flynn, Sidney Powell, and someone else. And Flynn came in the next morning, General Flynn, laughing, bending over at the waist, laughing and saying, this is so weird. Why can't they mention your name? They're afraid to mention their name, aren't they? I said, yeah, I'm kryptonite. I'm kryptonite. Let me explain. And I sat and I walked him through this story in greater detail than I ever had.
That was the first time you told him this whole story?
I told him in a 15-minute version when we first got to know each other. But I told him this thing. And he said, And then he stewed on it for several months. And then he said, that's when he said, we're going to get this out. But you want me to tell you the other funny, hilarious time I had him bent over double laughing?
I would love to hear. Yeah.
It's a little bit yellow. I hope your viewers are old enough to take it.
Okay.
He said, is this like a Christian podcast?
No. I mean, we're Christian. I mean, we are believers in Christ, but we do drop F-bombs and that sort of thing. So feel free, you know?
Well, he said to me, after 2022 and the election went right, I was ready to drop out. I was exhausted. I'd exhausted most of my fortune, much of my fortune. And I was just tired. I wanted to crawl in a hole and let it and overseas and play out. And he said, you know, he would never try to talk me out of that. But he said, I got to ask you one question, Pat. What are you saving it for? And I thought about it. You know, I'm not married, don't have any children. You know, I finally said, well, sir, I guess what every .com CEO, you work 20 years, 100-hour weeks. What you're thinking of the whole time is someday I'm going to be on some 300-foot, like Russian oligarch style trawler, helicopter, and I'm going to be wherever the snow is good, off Chile, off Greenland, off Aleutian. I'm going to be helicopter skiing all day, and I'll be coming down at night. It's going to be wall to wall, hot and cold, running blondes and brunettes and anything you can think of to take care of any of my needs. And he said, Pat, that sounds terrible. Don't you think that get boring after a couple of days? And I said, no, sir, it stays interesting for 4 or 5.